ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
When Arnold Dix was a little boy, an old-timer from the Snowy Hydro scheme taught him how to listen to a mountain. The two of them were about to enter a tunnel dug into the side of a cliff face in Jindabyne when this old man crouched down with his back to the rock and in silence, with his eyes closed, slid his hands into the ground. He told Arnold that you should always listen to the mountain before going underground, and that if you pay attention, you can learn a lot. Many years later, when Arnold arrived in the remote Himalayas in northern India with the mission of rescuing 41 men trapped in a tunnel collapse, he did something similar. Each time he entered into the mountain, Arnold pushed his back up against the wall of fallen rocks, buried his hands in the earth, and took a few minutes to listen. In the Himalayas, Arnold was one of the leaders of an incredibly risky rescue mission, one with so many lives at stake, and which made headlines all around the world, including back in Arnold's hometown of Mombok in country Victoria, which is something that surprised many of the people who thought they knew Arnold and what he did for work. His memoir is called The Promise. Hi, Arnold.
Hi, Sarah. My goodness.
See, it's quite a story that you're bringing to us this morning on Conversations.
You've made my hands go wet already with that introduction. It got me edgy, my goodness.
Seeing your face fronting the international media was a surprise, as I say, for many of the people who thought they knew you back home. What did your mates in Mombok know you as?
They know me as the worst farmer, local truck driver, because I do plant deliveries. Just one of the local people in town. Probably one of the least successful. Yeah. Like for 30 years know me that way.
You're also president of the International Tunnelling and Underground Space Association, which is what led you to being in India. Did that role mean that you were notified straight away when this tunnel collapsed in the Himalayas?
No, it wasn't actually the role. I think that was something people attached to help make me credible as someone to call, like who are you going to call? I'll call Arnold. No, actually it was my reputation that made them call me. And after the rescue, I actually reached out to the chief engineer of India and said, can you just explain again why you rang me? And he said something which I still only barely understand, but he said, because we thought you'd come. Literally, because I'd come.
Where were you then when you first found out about this collapse?
I was somewhere in Europe, and certainly the discussions with him started in Germany, and then the final call to come, I was in Slovenia.
And what could they tell you at this point, like right after it happened? What was known?
Oh, not a lot. In fact, after the first phone call, I said, could you get me some pictures? And this is how basic it is. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I just need some pictures. Show me what we've got. So he jumped in a helicopter, went up, and about a day or so later, shared me some pictures and what he knew. Because it's in a really remote location. We weren't even quite sure how many people had been killed or were trapped at that stage. And yeah, it was really basic, like it's tunnel rescue 101 kind of stuff.
So you knew that there were men trapped in a tunnel that had been collapsed, and was it known that they were still alive? What was known about their condition?
Not initially, no. Luckily, there was an air pipe for the air tools that hadn't been crushed in the initial collapse. And when that was realised, somehow or other, we figured out how to yell down the pipe, and there were voices at the other end. So we knew at least some were alive. And then with time, we thought it was 40 were alive. And then the first miracle occurred, as I unpopularly suggested. One of them had a baby, because then there was 41. Started as 40 and then ended as 41. And so then we knew we had 41 men who were alive. And then once we did all the roll counts, we realised everyone else had got out. So the situation was set. We had 41 men alive, trapped in a collapsing, although it had collapsed, it was still collapsing mountain. We didn't know how to get them out.
In your experience, is it unusual for there to be survivors after a collapse inside a mountain?
In my experience, my whole career, I've never got anyone out alive before, ever. It doesn't happen. And the few times that it does happen, everyone knows about them. So you can actually recite a little bit like, you can recite who the famous presidents of America are or something. You can recite the 3 instances where people survive. Normally they die.
And they'd managed to survive because although there'd been a collapse of rocks, a landslide stopping them from getting out of this tunnel, they had enough space, enough air that they were kind of in this little safe cave to a degree.
Yeah, it was not safe, but it certainly was a space. And by another miracle, not only did they have a little pipe that we could yell down, we could also blow air through it, and lentils.
And lentils.
And at some incredible high speed with compressed air. And also they had light, which was important. So the cable that had power was still running, so at least they weren't in complete darkness either.
A few months ago, Arnold, I was in the south of New Zealand, and there's this long tunnel through a mountain that you drive through to get to Milford Sound.
Very steep.
I did not like it at all. I kept thinking of this enormous mountain bearing down on top of us and thinking this tunnel had been constructed decades ago. I mean, how on earth do tunnel builders do it? How do you build a tunnel through a mountain?
Firstly, that tunnel that you didn't like, you have good reason not to like it. It's in a relic of a different time. It's incredibly steep, very narrow, and so well done. You can become a tunnel expert.
I feel even less confident that we decided to take our family through it.
No, but this is really interesting. What you've just said to me really highlights the intuition that we as human beings have. We know intuitively that being underground is not a safe place. We have to make it safe. And that tunnel in New Zealand is steep and old and little. So you were right. How do we do it? We have to find harmony, a balance, do a deal, basically, with a mountain to put a tunnel through.
What do you mean?
Well, mountains don't like holes being dug through them. And in fact, in time, all the holes we dig through a mountain will be healed. Literally, they'll be squished and they'll be removed by the mountain. Because although the common experience of rocks up here on the surface is nothing, like it's just a rock, as my mother knows so well, like, my God, Arnold, why are you so interested in these rocks? It's just a rock. Actually, when you're in a mountain, they're alive, they move, they squeeze, they do all sorts of things. And so a mountain doesn't want a hole put through it. So in order for us to build a tunnel, we have to do a deal with the mountain, and doing a deal in an engineering or a physics or a mathematics or in a true, real sense means somehow distributing the forces of the mountain around the hole that we create so that it stays there long enough for us as human beings to use it. We call them tunnels.
So it's not just a matter of digging a bloody great hole.
No.
It's thinking through what the complex physics and mechanics of this is going to be.
Absolutely.
And so it sounds like building tunnels is always a complex process. What makes it even more so in the Himalayas, where this tunnel was that you'd been asked to come and help with? So
the Himalayas are the point of collision between India, or the plate that India's on as it heads north, and crashes into China. Think of politics, think of plate tectonics, right? So you've got India and China colliding into each other. The mountains that we're putting these tunnels through, they were seabed very recently because it used to be an ocean between India and China. And so because they used to be seabed, the rock itself is very young and very soft. And not only that, the mountains are popping up out of the ground now. That's why there's earthquakes and things all the time. So if there was ever a mountain range that is alive, and if you ever needed to perform an operation on a live patient, sticking a tunnel through a Himalayan mountain is it. You really have to be in tune with what's going on. Otherwise, collapses. And then I guess in addition to that, there's all the complexities of remoteness and the extremities of weather. And I mean, really, this is a very tricky part of the world to decide to do any complex engineering. Tricky is a really interesting term. It's like the end of the long line of civilization out there. Like, it's like little goat tracks. So to get the equipment and things you need up there is really difficult. That's why they flew me in an helicopter.
After you got this phone call asking you to come and take a look at what was happening in there, and you're flying into the Himalayas, what was going through your mind? I mean, what sort of thing were you thinking through as you're not there on site yet, but I guess you've got some sort of sense about what you're going to be facing? You know how likely it is that these men will not make it out alive. What were you thinking?
Well, I'm trying to get the facts under my belt as quickly as I can. I'm trying to get myself into the right state of mind because I have to problem solve, and I'm not talking problem solving like you do at school. We have like a lunch break and then you maybe go home and have a little sleep and then come back the next day. Talking problem solving, got 41 people whose lives depend on us. If we do nothing, they will die. If we do the wrong thing, they will die. If we do what we normally do, probably also going to die. But if we can thread some course of action, maybe we can rescue them. And so in my mind, I'm clearing my mind of bad thoughts, right? Because I haven't got room in my head. I can't go, well, what if they die? What's going to happen to me? What if they die? They're going to put me in prison. What if they get rid of all of those thoughts and tune in? And so I'm busy tuning in on the geology, tuning in on other events, tuning in on the local culture, tuning in on the local news. And while I'm on my way, I see a press report reporting the local priest who's saying that the reason that the mountain has collapsed on these people, collapsed the tunnel, is that the construction company have demolished the little temple out the front of the tunnel on the first day of Diwali, the religious festival, really important religious festival up in the mountains. Okay, now we've got more than an engineering problem. We've actually got a cultural dimension to this, which is really serious. Because what's often not known and discussed is all of us that work in the underground, including here in Australia with all our projects, we have little temples out the front of all our construction projects.
Truly?
Underground. Yeah, here in Brisbane, if we go down, we go down here to Adelaide Street. Just before you go in, on the left side, there's a little one, a little Catholic one to St. Barbara, and there's also an Aboriginal one to the local god of the local community. And this is something we don't talk about because we know when we go underground that we are facing an inherently hostile environment and bad things happen as they have for thousands of years.
And so what, men, women working underground will just acknowledge those as they make their way past and begin their shift?
Yeah, but we don't tell anyone because that would that'll blow the cover on how tough we all are. And it's not a religious thing either. So it's not that it's there because we're all a particular faith or anything. It's a humble act of acknowledgement that we are going into a realm that we have to take a breath, have to reflect. See, it makes my mouth go dry even talking about it.
Well, you did something when you first arrived at the site. Before you even went into the tunnel to see what the situation was, what did you do?
The most important thing, actually, for the whole rescue, in retrospect, when I learned that the little temple out the front of the tunnel had been demolished on the first day of Diwali, and then after that there'd been the collapse, and that the local priests believed that the local god the serpent god of the mountain, Baba Bokna, had become offended by this, I felt that I must be respectful of the local custom. I'm becoming a part of a team to rescue 41 young men who are building also a pilgrim tunnel. So the tunnel, not only in the Himalayas, the most sacred place for the Hindu people in the world, but this tunnel is one of a small number of tunnels to take the pilgrims to the temples. And so I know somehow that for this rescue to occur and for me to be part of that team, I have to be part of the team. So I bowed down at the temple, and on my way, literally on the plane, on Wi-Fi, I'd been researching the gods because, funnily enough, when I went to school, I wasn't trained on this in Australia, and I read about Ma Kali, the god of death. And I have a career dealing with death for decades. And the Hindu god of death, Ma Kali, is depicted, and I know this will come as a big surprise to people and no one will understand what I'm saying, but is depicted as a wife in a bad mood. And so she is in such a bad mood because the bad gods are trying to kill her husband. And as a result of that, she just goes around and kills people randomly. And having said that, she does other amazing things. But when she's in a bad mood, she kills. So I felt an immediate connection to this manifestation of death, given my experience with death over so many decades. And I felt it was absolutely the right thing to do for me to bow at that temple and to have a little pray. I need all the help I can get. I'm prepared to do that.
After you paid your respects to Ma Kali and went inside the tunnel, what could you see? Your geologist, your scientific engineering brain is switched on at this point. What were you taking notice of around you? What was the situation?
So what I see from the entrance to the tunnel to the point where the collapse began, there were 21 prior collapses. And so it meant that the whole of the tunnel, from where we entered the mountain to the point where the current collapse was, is like a hair trigger. The whole thing can blow. That was my reaction, and that's what it felt like. So the whole, it's not like, oh, we've had this collapse, this is a big surprise, my goodness, how can this be? No, it has been collapsing 21 times. And so for me, I realise that we are dealing with a dire situation where at any moment the whole thing could rip apart further, and that would, of course, it would kill us and it would kill the people on the other side. And in fact, that's what the data was showing while we were doing the rescue as well.
What approach were they currently using to try to get those men out, given how fragile the mountain was?
Well, that's the traditional I'm a tough bloke approach, and that usually involves big machines and a lot of hard digging, because that's what we blokes do. And so my advice was, well, hang on, let's just take a breath. We've got a mountain which has previously collapsed 21 times in just a few hundred metres. We can see that the roof is still collapsing. We could still see it on our side. And the advice I gave, extremely technical advice, was if you have a choice between hard and soft, let's go soft. And if you have a choice between fast and slow, let's go slow. Because if I use the analogy that I raised before, if this is a live patient in a living mountain with an angry God and the thing's collapsing, we don't want to wake this patient. Right? We need to sneak in here and get our 41 people out and go home. And yeah.
When you arrived, it had already been a number of days since the collapse. It was clear that this traditional approach wasn't having success yet. What was the morale like among the rescuers?
Bad. Yeah, so what was happening when I arrived was there was a sense of inevitability of how this was going to end. Because initially the government had said publicly, we'll have them out in no time, as governments always do, don't you worry about that. But over the period of days it took me to get there, everything was failing. So the initial machines had broken. The initial attempts using the big tough methods had just resulted in further collapse. And there was a sense of pessimism at the site.
And did you see part of your role, Arnold, as changing that? You were there with a technical brain and experience, but were you also there to be a bit of a mood changer almost?
This is really where it all starts to get weird. Okay, so I'm a man of science and engineering, and I had no contract or anything. They just asked me to come and help. Just like, your neighbour does when your kid falls in the pool. Like, hey, Arnold, can you jump the fence and give us a hand? Kid's in the pool. So I've turned up. There's no contract. There's no job description. There's no what I can do or what I can't do. So I just kind of fitted in, and people needed to believe. And I can't explain it. In fact, you see my hands are wet, like it's wet on the desk now. I just knew somehow that I had to make everybody believe that we could do it. I had no idea how, but had to make them believe. And so I just declared to 1.4 billion people on live television and everything else and satellites and what have you, that we would rescue the 41 men and no one would get hurt by Christmas, with in retrospect, no basis for that at all.
Tell me a little bit more about what kind of feature character you were at that site. Like, where were you sleeping?
There's the official where was I sleeping, which was in a little, we'll call it a hotel, but a place out of the construction site. But actually, I was hanging out with the army in their tents, which were hidden in a shed so satellites couldn't see them.
Why? Why were you there rather than at the hotel?
Because, again, international phenomenon, but anyone who's into dealing with an emergency or management knows, if they're really serious about it, the best time to find out what's really happening is go at night when all the big bosses are asleep. So I lived and breathed in the tents with the army, and I would just work 24 hours around the clock, take sleep when I could.
It is such a majestic part of the world. What was it like to be there at night on those mountains?
There's the Australian view and then there's the local view. So the local view was you get your pink little self back to the hotel and don't go out at night because there's panthers and all sorts of things that will kill you running around in the forest, which is true. But then there's my view, and it was so wonderful. So I would go in the tunnel, see how the rescue was going, then I'd walk up to the top of the mountain because we had vertical shafts also as one of the ways we were building it. I had to be everywhere. It's like I had to know what was happening everywhere all the time so that I could make everyone believe. I mean, I believed we were going to do it, and it was just fantastic. It was it's almost like a life-changing experience to be in the Himalayas with the excuse of doing a rescue through the night. These forests are just beautiful, and they really do have panthers that eat people and all those sorts of things, and families of monkeys of all different sizes, and just so many wonderful things.
What are the stars like there?
Just gorgeous because you're at high altitude. The sunsets and the sunrise is the same. Just wonderful.
So as you're there sleeping on site with the army and enjoying the monkeys and the stars at night, there is all around you this massive rescue operation happening where people have been trying to just drill through the collapse of the original tunnel and, as you just said, also trying to drill down from on top. How close did the machinery manage to get to the men as time went on by sort of like day 14, day 15?
Yeah, we were within about 6 metres vertically. That was from a vertical shaft, but we had to stop. And that was...
Wait a minute, 6 metres. So could you hear the men? Could the men hear each other?
They could hear the sound of our machine coming down, but the problem we had was because these mountains are old seabed and they're pushed up, one of the big risks we have is drowning people, which comes as a bit of a surprise, but there are like oceans trapped in the mountains kilometres up in the air. And
wait a minute, water from rainfall or...
Rainfall and old oceans. Yeah, so, and that comes as a bit of a surprise, and also it's a bit of a risk because how would I explain, because I'm the public face. I've promised everybody that we're going to rescue 41 people. I've been warned, literally warned, because I've made such an outrageous promise that in the event that anyone dies, I'll be taking full personal accountability of it. How am I going to explain drowning them when we're kilometres up in the air? So we got the shaft within, let's say, about 6 metres of the crown, and we noticed water inflow was increasing in the area where the guys were. And also we got an endoscope in there and we could see the rock ripping apart. And I was really worried that we would trigger a catastrophic failure, which could, at best would be we'd just crush them, that'd be quick. But if we drowned them, how would we... So we stopped, and I think that's the strength of the teams that were working there, the fact that we were able to stop when we got within 6 metres because of the risk of causing a catastrophic collapse and drowning the men.
There must have been so much pressure, though. Yeah. I mean, I could feel it in myself. You're that close, 6 metres away. Just keep digging and they'll be free.
Be fine. Yeah, no, we stopped. And then on the other side, where we call it an auger, so imagine a big mincer with a pipe around it, and it's mincing its way in. It also stops at about 10 metres from where we need to get, on our best estimates, blows up. So rips all its rock bolts out of the ground and various other things. So
I guess at this point, when you've told everyone to go soft, go slow, and you're listening to that mountain, what did it tell you that the option was? The machinery wasn't going to make it through. What was left?
Soft. go soft. So I just felt that the softer and the slower we went, the more likely it is that we're going to find a solution. Because in the great game of paper, scissors, rock wins, right? And so we have to sneak in. And so soft has to be, like, again, my hands, it's a game where when it goes wrong, everyone dies. And so we must do it soft. And I remember we were having the meetings, wonderful meetings. So I don't claim to be I didn't go in there and dig the holes. I mean, I'm just part of the team. And we would have the conversations and I'd say to everyone, if you're feeling tired, have a sleep, right? Just have a sleep. Because at the moment, the miracle is there are 41 young men still alive. We're at day 15.
So, Arnold, listening to The Mountain, you'd realise that the best chance you had of keeping good on this promise you'd made that these men were coming out alive was to use hands to dig. Machinery wasn't working. It kept breaking. It was too rough a tool for the job. What people did you find who took on this task of this final bit of digging?
Well, I think credit for it goes to my Indian colleagues because they came up with the idea of putting men in the pipe. Got to say, not high on my list. I haven't done it before. But actually, there are these young men, because of course they usually don't end up getting old, young men whose life's work is going in pipes to hand clear them, sewage pipes, and particularly in cities, mining as well. And so even though it's outlawed in a lot of India, they brought in the rat miners. And these are little guys, because obviously got to be little to fit in the pipe, who make their living, and not very much, with their hands digging. And so that's what we went to next. So
talk me through those final 10 metres or so. How did they get from the end of that pipe to where those men were trapped? So the auger had broken, and that in itself is a whole other discussion because that was something we'd assembled on site. So the other thing is everything we did in the end we built. And so one of the other things I am is a welder. So I'm in the welding pit. Got to add that to your list. Yeah, got to add I'm not much of a welder, but hell, when you need it, I can help. So we got the auger, the machine that could push the pipe, pushing again, but we've now lost the auger, and we built a little trolley, literally with 10 mil steel, and put a rope on it, and we put 2 little people down the pipe, and then by hand they filled the little trolley, and then millimetre by millimetre we just edged the last 10 metres, which took a couple of days. And once they broke through, those 41 men were all okay, all able to make their way out? Make their way out is an understatement. So the theory was that they were all going to be triaged, and then we're going to strap them to little trolleys, and then one by one the waiting 41 ambulances would whatever. I remember being in the meeting. I said to the guys, you really think we're going to be able to do that? And they're like, yes. I said, anyway, I'm suspicious, but anyway, whatever. Of course, what happens, the pipe gets through, pop, the 41 men see it, hello, and like little rabbits, instead of taking 2 or 3 hours, 41 men just pop out like the biggest pimple you've ever seen. They're like, all the people just come rushing out. And it was just awesome. And I'd positioned myself up behind the families because actually I felt this was a matter, it's a nationally significant matter. I mean, the whole of India has been watching this 24 hours a day, 17 days. And so I went back behind the families. And the families, I thought that they'd be cheering or something. It was like they were seeing ghosts. Oh. And all there was tears, including mine. And it was just the most extraordinary thing. And they just all popped out. There they were. And so 41 men out safe, no one hurt. I didn't leave the tunnel till all my colleagues, the rescue guys, were out by Christmas. So the 3 wishes came true. It's extraordinary. I mean, the men were free. Your work, as you say, was done. Why did you head back up to that mountaintop before you left the rescue site? I have an alpha female mother, and she taught me that when you get what you wish for, you say thank you. And I had bowed at a temple and prayed for 41 men to be released, for none of us to be killed by Christmas.
and we got the 3 wishes. And so even though the Prime Minister's department ordered me to get on an evacuation helicopter because there was a risk that the mob, like there's like, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 people, something there, that they'd be so happy because I was the face of the rescue and I'd promised it and now we'd got it. In celebration, they'd also kill me. But I never went. What I did was, and I spoke with the rescue guys and I said, how about we go to the temple at the top of the mountain and give thanks? And we did. We just all went there.
I mean, you had kept so calm and so positive while things were unknown. Once you had that result that you were wanting, did that emotion just flood through you at that point?
That point, it's still flowing through me. I mean, I can't express in any language how it feels to have played a role, and it's a team thing, but a role in a rescue which is, in my view, a miracle, a role in a rescue where we achieve what seems like the impossible. And the feeling, and this is really weird because I wasn't sure. I mean, I didn't even think about what I'd feel like if we actually succeeded. I felt we could, but I'd never thought about what I'd feel like. I feel content. So it's not like I have a badge like, my name is Arnold, you know, like Schwarzenegger or something. It's not like that. It's just this incredible feeling of contentment to have been part of a team of decent human beings helping other people, because that's what decent humans do. That's what we do, right? That's what the 21st century is all about. And it's just such a wonderful feeling of contentment.
Did you get to see those freed men again?
I didn't think I was going to. And I went to the top of the mountain, did the praying thing, and Prime Minister's department was so upset because I missed the helicopter that they said I had to find my way home. And so, anyway, I had to find a car to take me out of the Himalayas. So if you think getting from the airport to the CBD is a problem, try finding a car to get you out of the Himalayas down to Dehradun. Anyway, found a car, got down there, get to the airport days later. Who's actually on my flight in the seats that, like, around me? But 21 of the 41 men. And I met them there. And they're exactly as I thought they'd be. They're young men, they're just kids. I think a few of them faked their age, little guys, and they're alive. And then when they realised I was part of the team and, yeah, we just had like a besties moment, a few selfies. It was lovely.
Yeah, as you say, you know, the whole of India was watching this. And not long after you made it back home to Australia, you were sent a photo of a fancy dress day at a primary school in Puducherry.
Yeah, Puducherry. So, how amazing, and this is a special message to all you old blokes out there, right? Old blokes, can you imagine how it feels when you discover that children, little children, for fancy dress, for superheroes, dress up as an old pink bloke? Like, that is just extraordinary. So I get these pictures and there's this little girl who's got a salt and pepper beard strap on with orange shirt and all the safety gear, dressing up as me. And isn't that what adults are meant to do? Isn't it that we're meant to inspire our young? The thing that had inspired her was the decency of what we'd done. It was the positiveness. It was we're going to rescue these men. It's the gentleness, I don't know, whatever it was that happened inspired young people to dress up. Not a Spider-Man, not fake Spider-Man, not super, but an old pink fat bloke with a salt and pepper beard. That is so cool. And yeah, that happened.
You know, one of the really interesting parts, it seems, of this whole experience for you, Arnold, is you've had many parts of your life been involved in disaster rescue. And you're a scientist. You bring all of the skills you have, your problem-solving skills, your kind of calm, confident demeanour to how to solve technical, practical problems. But it seems like this whole experience in India, it upended some of your ways of understanding how the world works. Tell me about that.
I'm a bit of a mess internally. So I'm normally Mr. Cool Cucumber, mathematician, physicist, engineer. But something happened up there. I had an overwhelming sense of purpose. I had an overwhelming sense of connection. I felt, and it sounds odd, and I'm not sure again if the English does it justice, but I felt connected to the 41 young men we were trying to save. I felt connected to the mountain. Hell, I even felt connected to the trees. Like we had to cut this road to get to the top of the mountain to dig the hole to come down vertically. And I recall touching the broken roots on the trees and apologising. I know that sounds like I don't even take drugs. If I took drugs, I could explain this, but I don't. I'm Mr. Serious and Sensible. And yet, during the rescue, I felt like I was part of something bigger. I felt as if all of my learning, my technical learning and everything had somehow come together, and I had a crucial role to play in this team. And that's changed me. And I think in a good way, because I feel somehow more human. I feel less arrogant. I mean, I don't think I've ever been really arrogant, but I feel, something really special. That's why I say I feel real contentment. And so it's really, and also I'm not a religious person. Like I wouldn't consider myself to be a religious person, and yet in all respects, as best I can tell, I appear to have had a religious experience. So it's as if the universe has granted me a religious experience even if I wasn't requesting it. It's a bit fascinating.
So it sounds, it's surprising and a bit mysterious to you, but what about your Indian hosts? Were they as surprised by the sort of coincidences and the connections that were shocking to you? What did they make of it all?
Oh, no, they completely understand. Their view is really straightforward. They believe that I am connected to Mark Harley and that I was chosen to be her representative to take my role in the rescue, and that I've been just swept up in the universe and its grand plan. Or my view is, I don't know. And so I'm really sort of struggling with that. But even when I went back, because a year later I went back to try and unpick this, because I've made a deal with myself. Each year I'll go back, which if I was a religious person would be a pilgrimage, but because I'm not, I'm just going back every year.
I see.
Yes. And I discovered, for example, that the position that I took on top of the mountain when I would look down the valley to reflect on what I would do next, exactly in that line of vision, is an ancient and not formalised Ma Kali temple that directly addresses this position I was on the mountain. Directly. It's like I'm looking at it. And so the more I try and dismiss this connection to that world that I found myself in, the more confused I get. And I don't know that I'll ever resolve it.
You grew up around rocks and mountains to a degree. Tell me about that, about your first introduction to the kind of miracle of geology, I guess.
Well, I mean, as you said in the introduction, the miracle of it was in Jindabyne when the old-timers, Snowy 1.0, before they even knew what 1.0 was, it was just a Snowy scheme, when they took me and grumpy old drunken European recently, became Australian citizens men would talk all touchy-feely and tell me to listen. And that's always stayed with me. And even as a geologist, when I was doing my mining geology, the old mining geologists would also say, just listen, feel it, because you'll feel the mountain. And so that very early education that I had, which was not strictly empirical, which was actually trusting myself in intuition, I suppose, has continued and plays an important part. And that's part of my tension. Like, I can't perform witchcraft to build a tunnel. I have to do engineering and science. And yet I'm saying there's an element of intuition in it.
It's not surprising that you studied geology at university and you were working as a scientist at first until you realised that your scientific reports were rubbing the powers that be up the wrong way, and you made the switch to law, which is perhaps the most curious chapter in the ongoing book of Arnold Dix. Tell me about the life of Arnold as a hotshot Melbourne barrister.
Yeah.
What was he like?
Well, he's, if it pleases Your Honour, he's a different face of me, and I am a lawyer, and some would say even a good one. And I became partner in one of the world's top law firms and gave it up. And I am still a barrister, so if anyone out there's got a .05, and they need the most unusual barrister, they can give me a call. But what it does, and His Honour Justice Osborne, at a reception that was done for me at the Victorian Bar, he was my master when I did my barrister training, he described it to anyone who didn't understand it. He said, Arnold is a scientist and a lawyer, and that means he's into truth and justice. And I'd never thought of it like that, but maybe that's what it is. So the justice is the law. That's what drives me with the law. I have a very, very strong sense of justice. And for the 41 kids who are trapped in that tunnel up in the Himalayas, some of the poorest people of India, probably earning $10 a day or less, justice meant they should get access to Arnold and the team to help bring them home so they could live their lives. So yeah, it's this truth and justice. So I see them as complementary but unusual, and they do involve different parts of my head.
You say that you gave it up, this life that you were leading as a barrister, successful barrister, committed to justice, but also enjoying all of the trappings that come with that way of making a living. What happened to make you turn away from that trajectory?
So 9/11 actually is what really popped my bubble. Back at that stage, I was very successful very quickly, and I was sent immediately to ground zero.
Why?
Because at that stage, for those of you who are old enough to remember, we were wondering whether it was a publicity stunt or not. Was it true? Had they really knocked down those buildings? But more importantly, was there more to come? And at that stage, my clients included metro systems under cities here in Australia. And so I went there on an immediate fact-finding mission, and I was uniquely able to do that because even by that stage, I was sitting on the world's peak bodies for underground rail safety.
Because a lot of those, in 9/11, a lot of people managed to escape that disaster by going through the subway systems.
Yeah, tens of thousands got out, ran the subway system backwards, took them out under the Hudson. Tunnels performed really well. I shouldn't say only, but about a dozen people were killed under there, but that was all. And the tunnels demonstrated themselves as being very resilient, very functional for rapid evacuation in a case like that. But it popped me because I saw for the first time just mass death, and also I felt that I could better use my skills to help the many in the underground, which is what I then set my course to, reset my sail and said, I'm going to go off and I'm going to help the many underground, which is what I've done.
So just so that I understand, Arnold, you're there and you see that there is such suffering on a mass scale, and you working as an individual lawyer can be of benefit to a handful of people, and maybe not even the right people if you're working as a lawyer, but you thought, I'm going to use my skills and be involved in disaster scenarios. I mean, did you have a picture in your mind what it might look like back then? Because it's a big transition to make.
It is a big transition, and at a time, I look back, that was at a time when I could get any car I wanted given to me for free for a week to try. Because, all the car salesmen knew if I wanted, I could get one, So I gave
I've never
up all
heard of
that.
Such things. You see, this is so far from the ABC, I can't even imagine, but okay.
Well, I should show you my ute now. So if you want to have a commercial future, don't do what I did. I just felt that I was helping the few achieve disproportionate benefit. And I felt that I could achieve a lot more by helping the many, by helping with international standards, by auditing systems, auditing underground systems, what have you. And I know this morning, not imagining it, probably in the order of hundreds of millions of people this morning came to work one way or another, whether it's in a road tunnel or in a rail tunnel or in a bus tunnel, however they might have come to work, and in some small way they'll be safer because of work I've contributed to. And I love that.
How much time are you spending back in Monbulk these days?
Not enough. I haven't managed to get one crop of flowers to grow since doing the rescue. The closest I got the field ploughed, I got the seeds in, I got the weeds under control, and then I got a call, had to go. So not enough.
This is itself, though, this little town, the site of some very interesting Arnold Dix projects, including pump organs. What are pump organs and what role do they have in your life?
I can't believe anyone wouldn't know what pump organs are. So in the 1800s, before electricity, when our, I suppose, great-grandparents used to have to entertain themselves, they would have a treadle organ, which is literally two little pedals that you pump, and then that uses bellows to create a vacuum, which then gets transferred to a set of reeds, and then you have a keyboard. Looks a bit like a piano, but it's a pump organ.
And it's sort of like, if I'm picturing it like in sort of old vampire movies or
Yes,
something like
definitely.
that. That's the kind of sound, that eerie...
Yeah.
And what's your connection with pump organs?
Oh, just because they're worthless and they get thrown out all the time. Like anyone who thinks I've made my millions collecting pump organs, no, wrong. They're completely worthless. No one wants them except me. But I just love them because I can imagine the parties, the weddings, the funerals, the celebrations at a time in history before electricity. They're like a dead end, they're like the dinosaur of a piano, this sort of ugly duckling thing, but they do sound cool, and I'm trying to teach myself how to play it.
You collect them and restore them, or how many do you have?
I was worried you were going to ask me that. I think it's about 30 at the moment, and my poor wife, I say to her, because she does complain a bit about this, she's very, very, very good, but she collects salt and pepper shakers, and she's got about the same number. And I say, but you've got your salt and pepper shakers. And she's like, love, you've got 30 like pianos.
Yeah,
like, it's a bit different.
It seems like it's on a different scale.
Yeah, it's a bit excessive. I've got to admit that.
Tell me about the monument that you started constructing at your place about 15 years ago, Arnold.
I had this idea that we could celebrate the living, and so I've built what I affectionately call Dick's Henge, and it's basically obelisks across the horizon for the sunrise, where each obelisk represents the position on the horizon of a sunrise for the birthday of someone I love.
I feel like I've just got a window into your brain with just that sentence. Every part of it, the decision to honour someone you love, the mathematics involved in doing it, and the kind of ancient history of construction. They're all there together.
All there, yep. And it's become a bit of a hit. Initially, some of my neighbours thought we were a weird religious sect. And then when they realised, it's just really a big birthday calendar and it's gorgeous. So now the neighbours come in for their birthdays and just sit there and watch the sun come up.
How did you calculate where they all had to go? Was that more complex physics?
Yeah, it was, but that's one of the mistakes. I initially thought it'd be really difficult and had computer models and simulations. And in the end, you know what I discovered? Sarah, this is a miracle. You won't believe it. The best way, and I'm sure ancient people did this too, you have a look. And so I actually sat there and had a look. And in the end, by having a look and recording what I saw, that in the end is how I built it.
So on the day of each person's birthday, you get up early and see where the sun is, and that's where the rock's going to go.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few I had to work out where to look from and everything. But in the end, that's it. It's like that hard. It's just decide where you want to sit and then have a look. And then you put a big rock there and everyone goes, oh, my goodness, that's so clever. And you're like, here's the secret. I just got up early last year and had a look. And funnily enough, the sun's back there this year.
It also seems fitting in that surely if there was a time of day that expressed you and your contribution to the world, it would be dawn, Arnold.
Thank you.
I thank you for being my guest on Conversations. It's been absolutely fascinating to get a sense of your life and achievements. Thank you so much for being my guest.
Thank you for having me.
Podcast? Broadcast? This is Conversations with Sarah Kanoski. Hear more conversations anytime on the ABC Listen app or abc.net.au/conversations.
Arnold Dix was my guest on Conversations today, and Arnold's book is called The Promise, and trust me, there are plenty more stories in that we didn't get to today. This conversation was produced by Jennifer Leake. I'm Sarah Kanoski. Thanks so much for listening.
You've been listening to a podcast of Conversations with Sarah Kanoski. For more Conversations interviews, head to the website abc.net.au/conversations.